Hello, my name is Andrea Campaña, and I'm going to be presenting today my work on Gabriela Mistral and her pedagogical writings. This year marks the 80th anniversary of Mistral's Nobel Prize in Literature, and this presentation will examine her pedagogical writings from Eric Fromm's lens, from the perspective of biophilia and necrophilia, that are two concepts or two orientations developed by Fromm. I'm going to share the screen now to show you a PPT and that I have prepared for you. So my presentation is called Education and Research for Life, Gabriela Mistral's Biophilic View of Education for These Times. To start with, I would like you to look at these photographs and observe the Elqui Valley, which is the place where Gabriela Mistral was born, and she started teaching in 1904. As you can see from the photographs, there is a contrast in the valley between the driest desert in the world and also a very fertile valley. We can say that experiencing the valley is also experiencing Mistral. She was very connected to the valley, and she asked that she would be buried in the valley in Monte Grande, where she taught, and also where she lived, and also there is a museum nowadays in that particular school. So if we go into the idea that I want to develop today, is this contrast that exists between the school system and some rigidities that the system has, and that we could consider them related to control and order, specifically with the idea of standardized tests and objectives that have to be complied with at a certain period in the life of a student. Mistral's pedagogical vision, on the other hand, opens an epistemological and ontological opening, okay? Because she tries to recognize the own rhythm of the child and respect that. So the question that we could ask is that whether individuals can develop their potentiality under rigid control structures that are imposed on them, or we have to listen to more flexible options or more humanized options like the one that Mistral proposes. So as I said at the beginning, the theoretical aspect of my work is based on Eric Fromm's theories of necrophilia and biophilia. Okay, necrophilia is associated, these are two orientations that Fromm detects or thinks that the human being has. So necrophilia is associated with the exercise of power and force, the desire to dominate and to control, and which is not possible. Then by trying to control things and people, there is a transformation towards death that is the only certainty that there is, right? On the other hand, biophilia is based on a necessity to conserve and defend life, tend towards unity and integration. There is a movement towards growth, and it focuses more on the whole rather than the parts. For biophilia, the attitude is more important than the norms. Biophilia or biophilia influences through love. Fromm also describes the idea of the industrial society and states that this approach to life is mechanical. So there is a risk here that Fromm is talking about, the idea that people are treated as numbers, that industrial concepts are applied to people and the inorganic is applied to the organic. So in this concept of the industrial society, there exists also a numbing of emotions. So there is a choice, which of the two are we going to nurture? The more necrophilic aspect or the more biophilic aspect? In the Chilean educational system, we can find that it is a system of accountability, right? That means that the excellence of the work is measured mm-hmm, with figures, right? So it is a system that focuses on results, but results that can be measured. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it becomes a sort of rigid system that is based on competition or centers on competition. And the biggest risk here is that when you prepare for standardized tests, and that allows you to enter to national rankings or so on, there is a risk that you prepare your students only for these kind of tests and to perform well in these tests, and you overlook other aspects of education that are important, such as emotions or an integral development of the human being in all of his or her aspects. So we enter into Mistral's proposal of a pedagogy that is more biophilic, that is not centered on this kind of tests or in this kind of control and order. For Mistral, the space is the how is related to the where. So what Mistral does is to allow the students to move away from the classroom and to enter a new ontic space, or to open the ontic space to the outdoors. So when that happens, Mistral believes that you enter into what she calls the real. And I'm going to quote, what happens in the real is what Mistral states as the class lost in gravity, which for me is an advance. I hate everything that means to darken the study. It lost in unreality. It was real and more human. The atmosphere of trust, the only one in which one is educated, was established more easily. This quote is taken from the outdoor school. So this aspect of the interaction with nature, the mingling with others that exist in this world, and the mingling of the idea of seeing other kinds of life and mingling on and interacting with these other kinds of life is what Mistral is searching for. Mistral is very much interested in the rhythms of life, when you allow the students to interact with nature, to be able to go outside of these walled classrooms, you are able also to allow the student to find his or her own rhythm. So Mistral's pedagogy is very much related also between the student-teacher bond. It's a new way of relating. Mistral moves away from this order or these formalities that exist in education and looks for a more horizontal kind of interaction between student and teacher. And she states that you have to be with the child. And I'm going to quote from the text, and to get away from the masses as much as you can, she states, it is about nothing more than being with them, because the class has been largely a simulation of that. Being with them at the teacher's house or going out with them for an aimless walk without the well-known little syllabus. In this possibility of moving away from the classroom, she states, they let go of their pharaonic band, the mummy band, right? They soften like heated gum and start to be creatures. So in this interaction outside the classroom, there is a building of trust between the different members of the classroom, students, teachers, and students, and also an opening of an emotional space where the student can trust and can enter into his or her emotions. So it is a safe space time frame for the students where for Mistral, the real child comes out whole and unmoved. I'm going to quote from the same text. To talk about anything, nothing important to begin with, but what comes along. In these big affairs, the child comes out whole and unmoved, comes out to shine, takes out his real bundle, delivers precisely the big truth, which in the class they want to get out of him by didactic means. So what happens is a revelation of the child that otherwise wouldn't, according to Mistral, happen. So in this beautiful encounter with the child outside the classroom, Mistral looks for this encounter, but also talks about what kind of things a teacher should do with respect to the child. First of all, she says that the teacher has to be spiritual, right? Has to have some kind of spiritual connection. That doesn't mean that the teacher has to be religious or so, but has to have some inner connection to a spiritual nature. You can take nature as a guide, and you can act as if you had this motherly love that she advises, or she thinks that it is important to have this kind of motherly love as a teacher, right? For Mistral, it is very important alterity, the capacity to listen to the mythology of the child, what the child brings. In the text, the teacher is the herald of imagination. She states the following: even the most unhappy child arrives at school bringing his mythology, a small handful of fables received, some on the lap of a storyteller mother, others from the neighborhood, the most passed from hand to hand by classmates. it would be necessary to listen to them first and see how to use the little treasure, even if it were only to value the one thing they bring and thereby open their trust. Here there is a very important point that Mistral talks about, the alterity, right? The idea of respecting the mythology that the child brings. And this respect is related to the child bringing something to the classroom and not seeing the child as an empty vessel, to use Freire's words, right? The child brings not only a mythology, a history behind, family history, right? A history related to his neighborhood or her neighborhood, but also his or her own imagination, and that the school should give him experience, intimacy, the capacity to trust, and most importantly for Mistral is the concept of love that sometimes is disregarded in the academic world. To finish then, we can say that Mistral's pedagogy is biophilic because it is more intimate and emotional, and it allows for spaces and rhythms of trust to arise. It's a pedagogy of experience. It explores physical and metaphysical terrains, right? Because it's not only being outdoors, but also connecting with something more spiritual. It allows for a relationship that is horizontal, and at the same time, it is very ethical because it moves towards the good of the child. So I hope you have enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I'll stop sharing now, and thank you very much.